Hello everyone. So I got a comment on my most recent video about my experience with the alt-right pipeline. And as I say at the end of every Off the Latch commentary installment, the proverbial door is off the latch for you to comment or email me your thoughts related or unrelated to the topic I'm talking about. And somebody did in the YouTube comments. So just in case you wanted to contact me about any topic, my email is in the description below, and so is the comment section, obviously. But this one was pretty interesting because I thought it was kind of a textbook example in a lot of ways of centrist, right-leaning thinking of, the average person who considers themselves more aligned with the right than the left. But before I say anything more, let's get through the whole comment and then I will dissect it piece by piece. Maybe it's different where you are, but YouTube is definitely not in favor of people who are considered right, no matter how far they are, even if they would really rather be considered centrist. Also, definitely false that right thinking is against critical thinking. I personally choose not to align with either side, sad where we are, but I see a more logical reasoning on the so-called right compared to the so-called left. Again, I don't know where you are, but at least where my country is concerned, the left has far more power and sway than the so-called right, and we've seen more negative results coming from that. It doesn't help that everything is about sides either. It should really be about what is right and wrong, and I'm definitely not saying that either side is not bad or not good. Both suck, honestly. There's also a saying that I've picked up which has some wisdom. I don't exactly remember the phrasing, but it goes something like this. Don't let your mind be so open that it falls out. There has to come a point where logic and the right thing have to be the line to stand on. Otherwise, once that line is crossed, you've opened the door to allow evil and the illogic. I do respect that at least you aren't being, if you think anything other than progressive, then you're a fool, or whatever it's called now. But I cannot agree with what you are saying, albeit I do respectfully do so. It's really hard for me to convey tone via writing, so if it doesn't come off as respectful, I apologize. So obviously this is a really kindly thought out comment in the sense that the overall impression I'm getting is somebody trying not to step on anyone's toes, specifically my toes, I assume. Not that I really have a problem with people who are aggressive with the way they respond to takes I have, but I did want to dissect this comment a bit just in case there were more than just this guy who may have interpreted what I was saying like this, or even better, if there are people who think like this who happen to stumble onto this video, just so I have an opportunity to verbally chat with these people. But let's start with the first part. I actually started filming a response to this just a minute ago, and I realized I started going off on these, really unrelated tangents about political figures and stuff, and I think I'm going to do my best to stick to the comment itself so that I hopefully come off as more concise and less rambly. So the first part is talking about how YouTube is definitely not in favor of people who are considered right, and then explains how, people who are finding themselves right-leaning now would rather consider themselves centrist, but because of, I assume, how ludicrous, they view the left to have become, that they are members of the right just by default. So first of all, I assume what he's talking about is YouTube is definitely not in favor of people who are considered right as being cancel culture, which is not what I'm talking about. I was talking about YouTube, the algorithm, not YouTube, the culture, because of course, aside from these pockets where sort of an echo chamber is developed with certain creators, YouTube as a company, of course, is trying to make themselves be seen as progressive, and the systems in place are progressive, and ideally, the culture that people spread around the internet is progressive. So I understand what he's trying to say there, but what I was trying to say is that when you stumble upon conservative media, the algorithm recognizes that you're watching a certain kind of media. You're watching Donald Trump videos, or you're watching Ben Shapiro videos, or you're watching Jordan Peterson videos, and so you absorb that content, and it wants to give you more of that, right? Because you're giving it watch time, giving the platform money, and so they will recommend more conservative media. So that's what I mean by YouTube is in favor of recommending you right-leaning content. Not that it's, in favor of people who are considered right, just that it's trying to show that content to people who are on the right. And then what I said in the video was that the far-right pipeline and organization, and following is founded on a lack of critical thinking, which I completely stand by. I'm not saying that all right-leaning thinking is founded on a lack of critical thinking. I'm talking about the radical nature of the far right. Just as with any radical group, you cannot have margin for doubt with a very radical group, because they do not allow seeds of doubt to be sowed within their communities. And so for Nazism or rampant sexism or homophobia, there's no room for a conversation about why hating a group of people might be considered a bad thing, because of course it's a completely logicless argument. It's purely based on emotion and hate, and that is what I meant by far right thinking, not just right thinking. But also he moves on to talk about the lack of aligning with either side, doesn't align with the left or the right, but also obviously aligns with the right, because he says he sees more logical reasoning on the so-called right or whatever. Look, I can see what people try and frame the left as being, this sort of progressive mob where you say anything wrong and you'll be cancelled into oblivion and you'll explode on the spot and die and your job will be taken away from you, etc. In very extreme cases, people who are blatantly racist, blatantly sexist, make homophobic remarks, whatever it is, do see the results of their actions, which has been happening a lot more in the last 10, 15 years than it has ever in the history of humanity. But I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I do think that the nature that people can't change, that people can't better themselves is a bit ridiculous and fear-mongery, but ultimately it is a good starting point, as opposed to no one being held accountable for their actions. And the idea that that far left-leaning radical thinking is so much worse than the right, that you would choose to align with the right, I think doesn't really take into account what far left people are pining for, which is all based on the fundamentals of human rights. Even if people abuse that and turn it into a thing about control, about, people have to say this thing in this way or whatever. Ultimately, the foundation of far left thinking, let's say the worst case scenario for far left thinking, which is censorship, and people, being punished for not saying the right thing in the right way, that is founded on people being respected and people being not persecuted against based on how they were born. Whereas far right thinking is the opposite of that, which is Nazism and rampant sexism, homophobia, transphobia, racism. It's there's no comparison between the idea that both sides are bad, because what left-leaning people want out of humanity and what far right-leaning people want out of humanity are like completely night and day when it comes to humanitarian issues. And I don't think that there's, for me, ever been a question about aligning with people who align with people whose views are racist and homophobic, sexist, etc. Just general bigotry. So yeah, I disagree that it's bad that everything is about sides. I do agree, though, that it really should be about what is right and what is wrong. And if you're basing what is right and what is wrong on love for people, then it shouldn't be very difficult to see that at least the foundation, whether or not it's abused is up for debate, the foundation of left-leaning thinking is based on a respect for people. And I don't really love the phrasing of "don't let your mind be so open it falls out," because where do you draw the line personally, as as to hearing new ideas. Because how can you decide that somebody starts talking and you go, oh no, my mind's too open, it's going to fall out? Hearing and considering new ideas is having an open mind. Hearing and considering an ideas and changing your opinion based on everything you hear is not having an open mind. That's having, a weak spine or someone who changes their opinion every 5 seconds. It's not the same thing. I don't think it's possible to have too much of an open mind, to hear people out too much. Unless, like I said, they are not treating you with respect, the way you should be treated, the way you should treat them. If there is a lack of respect involved, you are under no obligation to consider and interpret and engage with new kinds of thinking. And he said that, there has to come a point where logic and the right thing have to be the line to stand on. Very subjective, where his logic is, where his right thing is. And I don't think that hearing out new perspectives is opening the door to evil and illogic, because based on his thinking here, who seems to be somebody who is right thinking, opening your brain and mind up to the new cultural ideas, like, the trans movement, the idea that, people can hear that trans people exist and go, no, my mind's going to fall out, I can't leave it to be any more open, so this must be wrong. That is the kind of definition of having a closed mind. Deciding when your mind is open and not is not the same as having an open mind. That's kind of the point. You don't really get to choose when your mind is open or not, if you're only choosing it to be open to certain topics. So this is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about in that previous video. People who think that they have an open mind, but practically don't. And from this comment, I can see that it seems to be the case that he thinks that there's a limit to having an open mind, and that he would close down an argument that he thinks is bordering on the range of his mind being too opened. I do think that is exactly one of those cases that I was talking about. I appreciate the respect and the care that he constructed this comment with, to make sure he comes off as respectful as possible. I hope I came off as respectful as possible and not demeaning in any way. This just does seem to me to be one of the more base case examples of when you hear somebody, the average person, who is right-leaning and is susceptible to falling into these sort of pipelines. This is the kind of thinking they carry with them, and so I thought it would be a great opportunity to respond, and I'm really happy I did, and I'm really happy TNS Observer left the comment, and I hope you're watching this now and appreciated what I had to say and the place I was coming from. I'm not going to make this any sort of back and forth where there's a comment and then a video and a comment and then a video. I just thought it was a good opportunity to respond on this topic. But as usual, the proverbial door is off the latch for you to comment or email me your thoughts related or unrelated to this video.